Sometimes relationships don't fall apart because the love disappears. They fracture because life pushes people into places they never meant to go. For Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, the story is far more complex than the headlines and the rumors. Over the years, reports, interviews, and public documents have painted a picture of a family struggling under the weight of stress, conflict, and personal battles. And when tension rises inside a home, especially one constantly watched by the world, it isn't just the adults who feel it. The children do too. Their reactions, their distance, and their silence often tell a story long before anyone speaks. Today, we're looking at what may have led to the growing space between Brad Pitt and his children. Not to judge, not to sensationalize, but to understand the human side of a very public family's private heartbreak.
Brad was drinking so heavily that he could no longer control himself. And when a man spirals into alcohol, he doesn't just lose his calm, he loses the eyes watching him every day, his children. People often saw Brad Pitt as Hollywood's golden man, graceful, composed, kind. But he later admitted, "I drank too much. I was a real alcoholic." What sounded like a simple confession was, in truth, a reality he had avoided for years. Alcohol turns a gentle man into someone short-tempered, stubborn, and easily provoked. And that was what Angelina had to confront in the final years of their marriage. Angelina didn't leave Brad because he was a bad man. She left because he was drunk too often, forgetting he was the father of 6 children who needed a sense of safety. When a man struggles with addiction, the entire family must live in uncertainty, never knowing whether he will be gentle today or if today he will be a different, agitated version of himself. Angelina didn't expect too much from Brad. She only needed him sober, especially in front of the children. But Brad couldn't give her that. The 2016 plane incident wasn't the sole cause of their collapse. It was the last drop. When Brad lost control, shouting and acting aggressively, Maddox, the son Brad once held tightly and loved as his own, stood up to protect his mother. That wasn't rebellion. It was instinct, the instinct of a child who saw his mother trembling in fear. And Brad, drunk, reacted even more forcefully, like a man trying to win an argument he never should have participated in. That was the moment Angelina knew she could not let her children witness another fracture. The tragedy is that Brad wasn't a bad person. He simply wasn't sober enough to tell the difference between his wife's pain, his children's fear, and the boundaries a man must never cross. He didn't realize he was fighting against his own family. Angelina, who grew up in darkness, was hypersensitive to violence, even if it was just raised voices or a hand hitting the table. To her, violence lives not only in actions, but in the look in a man's eyes when he loses control. Many people later accuse Angelina of being too strong for any man to handle, but they didn't see how many years she stayed silent, enduring everything just to keep the family from breaking. She sacrificed her reputation, her work, even her health, trying to preserve a true home for her children. But she could not carry a man who was drowning in alcohol and in his own battles. Her strength was not enough to pull Brad out when he wasn't ready to step out himself. In that marriage, neither was entirely at fault, but one truth cannot be denied. Brad let alcohol rule him for too long, and he did not choose his family when he had the chance. Angelina later said she gave up their shared assets, not for revenge, but so Brad could see the harm their family had endured. But Brad didn't see it, or saw it too late. When a man drinks, he views everything through a distorted lens. He thinks his wife is against him instead of begging him to come back. He thinks the children side with their mother instead of fearing they are losing their father. The most painful part is this. Brad only realized everything after the family had already fallen apart. After the divorce, sober, Brad said, "I destroyed the things I loved most." It was the truest thing he ever said. He began therapy, quit drinking, and tried to regain his children's trust. But Angelina knew, and Brad knew, that one moment of drunken violence can destroy what took a lifetime to build. This story is not meant to condemn Brad. It shows that marriages break at their weakest point, and the weakest point is when a man no longer controls himself. When a man is drunk, he wants to win. When his wife cries, he argues harder. What he doesn't realize is that every harsh word, every moment of lost control, carves into a child's heart like a wound that never heals. The escalating legal battle. The legal war between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie continues to intensify. Brad is now urging the court to force his ex-wife to hand over documents related to their dispute over the French winery. According to Brad's newly submitted filings, he is requesting all email exchanges between Jolie and her associates, business manager Terry Bird, British PR specialist Chloe Dalton and Arminka Hellick, and 2 financial advisors. Brad states these emails contain crucial details about the sale of Chateau Miraval, including terms and negotiations. He cites Jolie's own statement that she regularly consulted Terry Bird on all matters concerning work and personal life. Brad argues that Jolie only submitted a small portion of internal emails concerning the sale while withholding the majority. He also asked the court to reject Jolie's request that he paid $33,000 in legal fees. Angelina quickly filed her own declaration opposing Brad's demands. She stated that private messages between her and her attorneys fall under legal confidentiality. I understand Brad has requested access to strategy discussions between me and my legal team. However, these communications are privileged, she wrote. In a filing submitted on October 9th, Jolie's lawyer explained why they demanded Brad reimburse her legal fees. Jolie repeatedly asked Pitt to withdraw his motion, but he refused. Therefore, we request that he be ordered to repay the substantial costs she has incurred, the attorney stated. In 2021, Angelina sold her shares to Tenonte del Mundo, a subsidiary of Stoli Group, but in February 2022, Brad sued her, accusing her of secretly selling her shares without his consent and violating their divorce agreement. Chateau Miraval is a multi-million-dollar estate in southern France where the couple married in 2014. After the divorce, they battled repeatedly in court over property and custody rights. Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie began their relationship in 2005 and share 6 children: Maddox, 23, Pax Thean, 21, Zahara, 20, Shiloh, 19, and twins Knox and Vivienne, 16. They married in 2014, but in 2016, Angelina abruptly filed for divorce, ending one of Hollywood's most iconic romances. Angelina received primary custody, while Brad was granted scheduled visitation. In her declaration to the California court on October 9th, Angelina revealed she has not returned to Miraval since the divorce. When I filed for divorce, I left Brad full control and residence of all our homes in Los Angeles and at Miraval, without seeking compensation. I hoped doing so would help him behave more calmly toward me after a difficult and traumatic period. But since then, the children and I have never returned because Miraval is tied to painful memories. She added that Miraval had once been a treasured part of their lives. It was one of our first investments. We were married there,
I was pregnant there. And I brought our twins home from the hospital to Miraval. Leaving so abruptly was heartbreaking, especially when our children's lives were so deeply disrupted. A child watching a drunk father doesn't just see alcohol. They see their hero disappear. A child watching their father yell at their mother doesn't just see anger. They see their family falling apart. Angelina didn't leave Brad because she stopped loving him. She left because she loved her children more. She knew that if she didn't protect them from Brad's lack of control, they would grow up with the same fear she once lived through. All she ever hoped Brad would understand, as she once said, was, "Please be gentler with the children and with me." But when a man hasn't awakened from years of intoxication, he cannot hear even the simplest plea. The harsh but honest truth, Angelina never needed Brad to be perfect. She only needed him to be sober. To understand that family is not a battlefield. To understand that each child looks at him to learn what it means to be a man. But Brad learned that lesson far too late.